Good morning, seventh grade. I am once again recording these ahead of time. So I don't know what day it is that you're watching this. It'll be probably Monday or Tuesday of next week. Today is Friday, December 4th in real life where I am in the past. So this will be posted Monday or Tuesday. So I don't know specifically off the top of my head what day it is for you. But for me, of course, it's Friday. So also, because I don't know what day this is being posted, we do have the fourth section. So in a couple days, I'll be posting the section 4 video. Excuse me. And then we'll be ready to take the test. So sometime the next week, which is between the 14th and the 18th, we'll have our test. And so I'm guessing right now it's going to be Wednesday, but I do not know that for sure. But you need to keep checking Remind in Google Classroom, just like you should be doing every day already. And I will provide updates with what the situation is going to be for coming in for a landing to take this test. And then we'll be ready to go on our Christmas or holiday break. And so keep an eye out for all that good stuff, and I will post, I'm sure, some sort of video review of the 4 study guide pages, so that way you have all the information you need to take the test. But otherwise, let's get into this. As you can see here, the war is moving west and south. The Western frontier, and like I've explained in class several times, but to you sometimes, the West back then does not mean what the West means now. When you're looking at a map of America, we did not have basically anything west of the Mississippi River. And so when we're talking about the western part of the United States back then, we're talking about like here in Illinois, Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, the Western frontier. We didn't have California. We didn't have Colorado. We certainly didn't have Alaska or Hawaii. And so, that's a lot of, when you look at a map, when you talk about the Midwest, we're in the Midwest. But, if you look at a map of the United States, by no means are we in the western part of the United States. So how did that get its name? And this is how, because we used to be the very western, the Mississippi River, which you cross to get into St. Louis. That used to be the western border of the United States. And so, a lot of the important battles of the American Revolution took place in what would be considered the frontier of the West. Much of this fighting involved Native Americans. Although some of the Native Americans helped the Patriots, more of them sided with the British because they thought that the British presented more of a direct threat to them than the Americans did. They felt like after the proclamation of 1763, if the British were to win this war, that they were more likely to leave the Native Americans alone than the actual American colonists were. And as we can see, looking at a map of the United States, that turned out to be true. We expand until we went from ocean to ocean. And now at this point, even further than ocean to ocean, when you consider that we have Alaska and Hawaii on one side, and then a lot of Caribbean, Puerto Rico and Guam on the other side are not states, but they're territories. And so west of the Appalachian Mountains, the British and their Native American allies were raiding American settlements. Joseph Brant was the leader of the Mohawks, and he led a series of brutal attacks. And there was a British general named Henry Hamilton who became known as the hair buyer because basically he would pay Native Americans per scalp. A scalp is when a Native American would cut off the top, grab your hair. Obviously, it's not that easy to do to me, but for the rest of you, grab your hair, and he would cut off the skin on the top of your head. And basically, like if you buy a gift for somebody from Target or Walmart and you need to return that gift, you have to have a receipt, and it's called proof of purchase. And this is basically what he's paying for is for Native Americans to kill people. And so that is basically your proof of death. Can you live without the top of your head? In 2020, maybe they could skin graft and do something for you. In 1777, no, you might die slowly and painfully, but you're probably going to die. within a few hours. And so, and so that is pretty much 100% confirmation that they have killed someone. And so, again, I mean, it sounds cruel and it sounds vicious, and it is, but war is like that. And so, the idea that one side is doing that and the other isn't true in basically any war. George Rogers Clark. I live in Heron, and we have a George Rogers Clark plaque in town. It is very underwhelming. It just basically says George Rogers Clark walked through here once. But that's the kind of person he is in American history. He is considered to be a hero and the kind of person that you would build a plaque for if he walked through your town. I mean, we don't have a lot going on in Heron otherwise, so we got a lot of stoplights. But otherwise, there's no real reason for us to build plaques for many other people. But basically, Illinois. He was in and around the Indiana and Illinois, this area. Like I said, literally Heron, and we were at this point part of Virginia, and he and his people were suffering from Native American attacks. And he wrote a letter to the governor of Virginia like, "Hey, dude, we're being attacked. Can you help us?" And the governor of Virginia was like, "Bro, we are at war. In case you haven't noticed, figure this out yourself. We can't spare the help right now." And so he did. And so what he did is, he basically would sneak Kaskaskia and Vincennes are his two most famous battles. And what he did is basically overnight, he would put his men up on hills around the city. And he only had about 200 men with a very small fighting force. And when the sun was coming up, he would basically march into town and talk to the British leader and say, "All right, bring your general out here." And he would say, "Hey, listen, look up there. Look at all my people all around you. We have you surrounded. Behind all those people that you see, I have 10,000 men. And they're waiting for me to give word. And if I give the signal, they're all going to come rushing down the hill. They're going to flood your town, and they're going to kill all of you, man, woman, and child, and take no prisoners. Or you could drop your weapons. We could put these handcuffs on you now. You could surrender to us, and we'll spare your lives." So in Kaskaskia, in both instances, the British general's like, "No, the option 2 sounds better. We don't want you to come kill us." And so they dropped their weapons and they were put in handcuffs. And so George Rogers Clark's like, "Oh, we got you. That's literally everybody we have. That's all of our men. We had no backup at all. You would have easily killed us. You made a huge mistake." But anyway, he won both of these battles with almost no fighting because he was able to talk people into giving up because he convinced them he had them overwhelmed, even though he did not at all. So Britain had the biggest and best navy in the world. They blockaded American ports to prevent reinforcements from reaching the Continental Army. As I've mentioned before, the reason Britain had such a great navy was because they are the richest and best military on earth at this time, and also they're an island. And so your first priority is going to be your navy, because that's fighting at sea, and people cannot get to Britain to attack it without a boat. And so if you could prevent boats from docking, you can really win a lot of wars, and they did back then. The Continental Army quickly ordered the construction of 13 warships, and they could not have gone worse. They immediately were basically turned into toothpicks by the British Navy, because even once they were built, the American Navy captains had literally no experience, and the British Navy captains had decades of experience. However, we did have some people in America who did have experience, and they were people who were merchants, who were buying and selling things, and they had experience having their ships armed and fighting off pirates at sea. And so we came up with the idea of hiring them and basically just increasing their pay to fight the British instead of shipping for a little bit. And so when you're a merchant, your main goal is to make money. You're already fighting the pirates. And so basically they were just accepting more money to turn their guns on Britain and fight the war for the Americans. So basically, we subcontracted the war out to these privateers, and it worked. They were much more successful fighting than our, amateur Navy captains were at the time. So volunteers are hard to find. These guys are always after money. And so if you pay people, they'll do stuff. We talked about it in the last section. The British were mostly fighting with mercenaries. This is us hiring mercenaries of our own. A mercenary is just someone who's hired to fight a battle. In the early years of the war, the Americans had won some battles in the South. By 1778, the British realized that bringing the colonies back into the empire would not be easy. And they decided their best bet was to try to win in the South where there were more loyalists. And then they could get those loyalists to join them and increase the size of the army and then move up to the north. Obviously, since you're not going to have soccer practice and stop for tea this afternoon, it did not work. We ended up winning. Spoiler, sorry. So the British took control of Savannah, Georgia, and eventually the entire state. They were left in the hands of Charles Cornwallis. And the basic problem is that the South is too rural. The British had massive successes within cities where they had experience fighting in heavily populated areas. But America, as I've mentioned several times, is huge. And so even when they were able to win an area of land, they did not have enough people to leave people there to control it and spread out throughout the countryside. And so they did not have the fighting power necessary to control such a large and spread out land. And so the idea of America as a farming society really helped us. They also did not get enough help. They did not get as much help as they thought they would. We talked about guerrilla warfare back in the last chapter and a couple sections ago. Americans were good at hiding around random places in the countryside and attacking the British as they went to and from where they were trying to get. One of our most famous guys was Francis Marion, known as the Swamp Fox, because he hid in swamps and he would attack people from there. Bernardo de Galvez was the governor of Louisiana. Even though the Spanish was neutral, he was really into the ideas of freedom that America was promulgating and pushing. And so he loaned thousands of dollars to the Patriots, opened his ports to the Americans, led a ship, and actually fought for us in some instances. Finally, in 1779, Spain declared war on Britain. And so now we've got France and Spain helping us in this battle. And so that's a big help. Nathanael Greene replaces Horatio Gates as commander. He splits the army in two and basically set them on separate ways to try to win battles and then meet up and join and form one larger force. Cornwallis tries to flee to the north. And he tried to win a few battles along the way to try to just basically get out of Dodge and get out of the way. But he had very limited success. And so the writing is on the wall. Things are starting to turn, and the British are starting to realize that they are not going to, even if they can win specific battles, they're not going to be able to remain in control of the entire countryside. And so the writing is on the wall for the British. They realize that the walls are closing in and that things are not going to go well. Your Google form today, just post today's date because I don't know what it is. So whatever day that you're seeing this video and it's posted to Google Classroom, just post today's date for your attendance question because that's it for today. And I will see you later. Keep washing your hands and wearing your mask and all that good stuff. And keep checking Google Classroom and Remind for updates on when the test is coming and when your notebooks are going to be due in the old gym lobby. That's coming up pretty soon within the next couple weeks also. So otherwise, have a great rest of whatever day this is, and I will see you later. Bye.